Namaste and welcome to the channel Khojpatra. My name is Sunil Rajdakal and I'd like to welcome you once again to yet another edition of the interview session. Today we are talking with a very special guest. His name is Wolfgang Korn. He is a German-based architect who traveled for the first time to Nepal in 1968. Since then, his love for Nepal, his love for the architect here is still growing on. Apart from the architect, he is also an artist. His life journey, the books that he has written, counts to 4 till this date. We are talking with him regarding his art journey, life as an architect. In the same line, we'll be talking with the director of the Mona, Mr. Rajan Sakye, as well as the artist who is young, energetic, the Roshan Dangal, regarding their journey and regarding the assistance that given to the artworks that the Wolfgang had produced. So Wolfgang Korn, right?
Right.
Am I pronouncing it the right way?
Yes, very good, Wolfgang Korn, not
Right.
Wolfgang.
Right. So let's begin from your childhood. What was it like to grow up in the East Germany when you were a child?
Yeah, you see, I can't remember the very first years because too small, but the place we stayed was the hometown of my mother, but because of after war, as the father was, I don't know, left very early for West Germany, so I think it was a very difficult time, and she had to trade family belongings to get money, yeah, and I only remember that, yeah, it was a hillside small village, and of course knowing nothing about East and West Germany or so. And I think for 1 year I went to school, and then my mother with brother and sister moved to the north of Western Germany because America, England and France, they organized to, how to say, bring the people maybe from the middle part of the east to the northern part, and so they divided up the people to maybe even meet relatives. And at that time I don't know how my mother learned about my father's place. Very, very tiny village somewhere in the north of Germany. Yeah. And there for 3 years I went to school, and we lived as refugees in 1 or 1.5 rooms on a farm. So also difficult conditions. You can imagine the food was scarce, and the farmer wasn't very happy to have about 8, 9 refugees he had to take on, was forced to, yeah. And being about 7 years or 8, we moved to the south, to the large city of Düsseldorf, where my father found a job. He was mechanical engineer in a large factory. Yeah.
So how did you, during your childhood days, were you interested in arts and architecture there?
Not at all. Yeah. I mean, I think I like to draw, but the main task was to survive and get, how to say, I did wear for coming 6 years or 4 to 6, 7, second-hand Luga Juga only, yes, because no money, yeah, and so doing sport, I never got as a child sport shoes, yeah, and as my father and his second wife, the parents divorced, suddenly we have been to 4 children, and the stepmother and father in a small place, and even having been an engineer, income at that time was low, yeah. So how to say, food, everything was scarce, yeah. So it was a difficult time for young boys to realizing that others are better off. Yeah.
Right. As an adolescent, do you remember any of your significant school days where you were interested in arts, or is there any?
No, I think it developed slowly, and I remember that I was good in sketching only, and there's a Christian organization. It's also, I think, in India you find it, Christian Men, CVJM, Christian Young Men's Organization, and this I joined, and it was a good contact. And for our church there, for Christmas, I designed posters twice for Christmas to show that the West is, how to say, not forgetting the East. So I designed a big candle surrounded by barbed wire. This I remember, yeah. And I think maybe it was not the thing I liked most. I like to do sports too, yeah.
So it was in 1968 that you came to Nepal for the first time.
Yeah, but we have to, how to say, go a bit back, and because school system is very different, I had to leave the school. I could not go to the highest grade because I had to learn Latin, English and French, and I just could not do. And by incident, I didn't know what to do afterwards. And you know the system of apprenticeship, each profession you select, from plumber to, I don't know, painter or draftsman. You have to do it for 3 years. So by chance I got the opportunity to become draftsman at the architecture office. And there, of course, I learned at least to make technical drawings. And having finished it successfully, I moved to another town, meeting my mother again, because she worked there, and there was a school, kind of, I don't know if you heard about Bauhaus. It's a quite, at that time, not like Rana style here, it's a very straightforward things. And this was the best school for me. We did much of designing, freehand sketching, painting, and not so much interested in technical, or how you call it, doing the calculation about beams and this and that. And this was where I really found support in drawing and sketching, and also first nude paintings, which I didn't know before, but it was not much. And at that time, in Germany, every German man had to join army for 2 years. And maybe I had bad experiences as a child or after war or so, I did not want to join army, was very clear. And so I applied for the German volunteer service to go to West Africa, because I had read a book on Cameroon, a country which has been years before also colony, German colony, and they asked me, oh, we don't have a post there, don't you want to go to Nepal? I didn't know anything about Nepal, except maybe Sir Edmund Hillary, Sir came later, that he climbed Everest. Yeah? And no information, no tourist guidebook. At least I was not interested in Asia. Yeah, but they asked me, and as I want to escape army, so I said, yes, why not?
In the 1968 or the late 60s, what was your first-hand experience once you came to Nepal? What was it like?
The first experience in Asia has been, at that time, a few flights only from Kathmandu to Delhi, no other connection. And we had to wait for 2 days or 3 nights staying in the best hotel that time in Southeast Asia, Ashoka Hotel. And not knowing anything about India and how poor people can be. Yeah? So the cultural shock we got over there, especially as Ashoka was expanded, so we saw the laborers working, sleeping with the children under a tent. And when we went by taxi, for example, to Old Delhi, because we wanted to see, we scared so much when we tried to drink tea in a small shop, to let the tea run over the fingers, hot tea, and not touching the dirty glass. Yeah. So I think it might have been good, because not knowing anything about Asia, to get the cultural shock, the first major one, down there. Yeah. And in Kathmandu, I don't know, and I stress it, as the first, we did land maybe 3, 4 o'clock, went to our home. We have been 3, say, young men and 3 young women in Lazimpat, and then another German volunteer showed us around by taxi. We went to New Road, then to Hanumandoka area, and then it got dark already from there via Indrachok to Asan. And you must imagine, half dark. Almost no electric light, maybe a few bulbs here and there. In the shops you saw the butter lamps, and it was kind of mystic. Yeah? And the first time to see pagoda type of buildings. Yeah? And the noise very different, the smell, and the dogs around. And why are there cows or bulls on the road? Yeah? This was very impressive, so that we went next day with a bit of more time and more light around Old, but only on a very short tour. There was no city map, so how to find around? And we had to go to Nepal Bank 2 at New Road, also one experience. It took 9 signatures by Nepal Bank officials to open an account. Yeah? And in this case, within 50 years, nothing changed. A short story. Last year, my son and daughter and one more came here. So we drove to Bhaktapur, the eastern side. And I realized I didn't have enough rupee to pay entrance fee. What is it, $10 or $12 or so? But we had dollars, and the, how to say, man in charge told, oh, over there, there's a bank, you go there. So my son wanted to pay, so he went. After, say, one night only in Nepal, or one day, and it took 5 minutes, it took 10 minutes, it took 50 minutes, it took 20 minutes. And then my daughter went there and he came back red-faced. Those Nepalis, why do they need the name of my grandmother and grandfather to change money? Yeah, so the system you have to, I never experienced it here, because I go somewhere changing, but I don't know which bank, yeah, and you came with proper money and passport, yeah, why to write down how many sister, brothers, parents' name, grandparents' names of mother's side and father's side, so, yeah, so you can imagine that it was a bit difficult, but it worked, yeah, and then we started again around. And the first contact to erotic carvings, because of course at that time already the tourists have been brought to Jagannath temple to watch.
So during the 1968, what did you basically do at that time as a volunteer?
I was for maybe 1 year the only architect in the building department, maybe in Nepal, because all others, the young men and one lady, I will get the name later, have been engineers trained in India or Russia. Yeah? And I was designed to help building department, and being an architect, but not knowing anything about here modern building culture, I was asked to design the minister quarter at near Pulchok, yeah, and we realized when maybe the ministers or someone in charge asked certain questions that the ministers or the people in charge could not read maps properly, so the first models made of, how you call it, cardboard, we prepared over there. And second was electricity department, somewhere in the fields, rice fields, and the task was to make the floor plan very flexible, because they didn't know how many rooms of which size they needed, so I designed certain wooden elements, wooden with plywood, that you can take it easily apart and move. But I never saw it ready, only under construction. And at that time, one Mr. Karl Pruchard, a UN advisor, has been at the town planning section, and it turned out that he was very, very far-sighted, not to do town planning of Kathmandu, but Kathmandu Valley Plan. And if you want to do Kathmandu Valley Plan, you must know the villages have been known, and some were marked on very simple maps. Where are all the holy places, like Bishanku Narayan or Vajrayogini? So I got, I don't want to name him, an engineer to help and go places. So the driver was informed of a Russian jeep to go there and make maybe 1 or 2 photos and measure the plan, simple way. But my team has been the driver and me. Yeah? No one of the Nepali or Neva at that time officers wanted to leave office.
Oh.
Yeah? But by that I learned and went to all villages or around villages and all sites. So most, maybe 90% of places measured, even Vajrayogini in Sanku, the plan for the, I don't know if you know, the large inventory have been done by me. And so I learned a bit. Yeah.
So during that time, what was the transportation like? Was it easier?
Bicycle.
Bicycle.
Yeah. Look, not one motorbike. not one. I think mid of 70s they came, and mainly driven by foreign or also German volunteer service. But the roads have been better. Gravel road to Sanku was far, but easy. Never traffic jam, except maybe when the Prime Minister or King had to apply that the road was blocked for even half an hour before he came. Yeah, but you knew, or I knew how to sneak through somewhere around. So much of difference that I could not believe that it would change, say, because of the how you call it here, the war, that the population exploded maybe from 400,000 to more than 3 million. So, how to say, and it was important to have the Indian motor bicycle first to learn to have 2 brakes. At home we got one, and one you do with it. But no problem. And I have really to mention the sad part of hygiene and toilets. The toilet at building department with foreign trained people, you could only pee into it, but you could not enter. So if there was need, I had to cycle home to Lazimpat from Baba Mahal. Yeah?
Just to pee?
Not for a pee, this I managed. Yeah? And so we only went privately by bicycle, but to go places, we had a Russian Jeep, and of course quite often not, because someone else needed it, so it was seen as a bit unimportant. And at that time they also started to plan ring road, and the Austrian Karl Pouchard thought of one around Kathmandu and one around the base of the hills. And what I learned later, politicians decided, this is not good, let's do one in the middle. Yeah? So the ring road was built, good for nothing, because no cars, there was no traffic. I got nice photos myself, and then in internet, children play on the, yeah?
On the road itself? On
the road itself. The road, the Chinese made to Bhaktapur, and also with a trolley bus later on, empty. Yeah, maybe one or two. Most of the buses to Bhaktapur went the old road to the north of Timi until the, how to say, the landing strip of airport was extended. Yeah? So then they all had to go. So going places also with minibuses, no problem. Except when in 71 I measured Puchaharimat, so I had to travel to Bhaktapur, had to learn that the Neva didn't have the system of eating outside. That means no restaurant. In Kathmandu, the first restaurants have been opened by Tibetans and maybe some Indians. That means I survived for 4, 5, 6 weeks on tea and jerry swari, the mitai of, yeah, nothing else. Yeah, and going by bus was comfortable, but for 3 days or 4 days, impossible, because all the young people went to Bhaktapur. You know why? Shooting of Hare Krishna, Hare Ram also at Bhaktapur. So thousands of people wanted to use 1 dozen of minibuses to get there and back. Yeah, was also good experience. So traffic was, you can say, completely different. Yeah.
So was it during that time that you designed the Susya Bahar?
Yes, and by the work of going around and measuring, Dr. Mary Slosser, I don't know if you saw her book, Nepal Mandala, together with now he is Doctor, Professor Gautam Bhattacharya. They learned about me because I think they came also to the department to find out about maps or whatever, valley maps. And so she asked if I would be prepared or willing to work for her. And my contract was with a German volunteer service, hole 68, hole 69. So I said, yes, I will do. And then at that time I got the highest payment ever, because for an American standard, $500 wasn't too much, but it was almost 10 times more than I got in German mark from volunteer service. Anyhow, so I had to look for a space, and I think at that time near New Road, and I didn't know much about how to say architecture. I only knew the old places outside, and I knew, of course, about temples and Kathmandu also. And she made a list, and she also wanted to find out what I'm able to do. So the first was Chusya Bahal. So within 6 months, I prepared most of the detailed drawings seen now. And the Bahal, because it was easy to measure, because you could, except the main shrine, you could enter all the other rooms and flats, and the room height was very difficult. And I think second has been Kathmandu, very large, but also possible to climb. Yeah. So, but I have been alone. Yeah. How to measure? So locals, I had a tape. Someone had to keep 0, and then I measured, and I got, I call it folding stick, 2 meter, 2 meter bamboo, 2. So fix my stick to bamboo, and then I could measure. Yeah. And inside the main large beams, I had to get with a stick to a certain point and then take a tape, and someone had to read. So it was not easy. And of course they wanted to have temples measured too. I only knew them from outside, and so Gautam and Mary searched for temples not popular, or how to say, underused by the believers, as many of the, or some of the Mala kings donated a king in the remembrance, I don't know, of a dead mother or so, but without religious value. So they selected Charnarayan of Patan Durbar Square. No idea how to get in, but sometimes the door was open, and around the cellar or shrine there's a, how to say, by the lower roof, protected walkway, and in the ceiling I saw a small hole. And I was very sportive, so I was able, carefully looking if someone would see me getting in. So I climbed, and what I didn't know, that from outside the buildings look only made of bricks, and of course the wooden rafters and struts, and inside there, Charnarayan not so much, but Majudega later on, a wooden skeleton crisscrossing beams, and those I could use to climb to the very top. Yeah, and say a dirty job, 400 years of pigeon shit and dust and dead pigeons at the ground, yeah, but I was very eager. I think I have been very curious, also privately. I wanted to learn how those things have been built, and the overhang of the roof, measuring through a window, again I had my bamboo, and so I looked downwards if someone would see suddenly a bamboo coming out. Yeah, so it was very, very difficult, but also important. I had learned at my school to make nice sketches. You need good sketches to put the measurements in, and as more detailed the sketches are, as more details you can show, because you might forget, and I have to enter 3 times or 4 times, going home trying to do this drawing on tracing paper, and then I realized I forgot this and that, so I had to go there again. So I learned a bit, and funny story, that one day, I don't know, 15-year-old beggar or so, young boy, asked me, "Oh," he spoke a bit English, "you go up." I say, "I no go up." "Yes, you go up." Simple English. "So how you know?" "I saw your footstep in the dust upstairs in the floor," yeah? Yeah, but no complaint. And then we took on Majudega, Kathmandu, and you know the one on the many steps. And over there, a family with one small child lived with and around Shivalingam. You know, like a squatter, yes? No one cared. So they've been happy to have 3 roofs above them. And I had to bribe them maybe with $50, also very cheap, I don't know how many rupees at that time, to let me climb. Yeah? And it was high, higher than Chana Rhine, but I had more beams crossing, and so it was quite easy. But I like to tell, if I would have fallen down and broken my spin or so and have died, my bones would have been found now after earthquake. Yeah. So it was, I think, too dangerous, but I wanted to do. And later patties and satals, it was easy to measure, but how to say, I really got interest to learn, and they've been satisfied, but also making drawings. There was no stationery shop, and especially with certain ink pens with special ink you could use. And I think I got paper from building department, because Prussia, maybe at that time in Europe, the only good factories have been for pens and the tracing paper, Germans. And to make copies or blueprints, how it's called, you need a specially prepared paper, but we did not have a machine. So we went to the rooftop or one area of building department, and me at another place, to use the sun for, how to say, like X-ray getting through the paper, and my lines were then developed under from this. It's difficult to describe. So very simple conditions, and a major decision was how much I can go into detail. So you might not know 1 to 50 or 1 to 20, so 1 to 50 I could not show enough details. 1 to 20 too many, because how to photograph or from a strut, how to get the exact dimension and the wood carving. So I selected an unusual 1 to 33, and I had brought from at home a scale which never have seen in England or here, with 6 different scales. Yeah, therefore I could do in a very practical way. And I think
during that time that you also went to Taragaon in order to design the architecture?
No, the design was done when after I left building department, finishing German volunteer service by Karl Pruchard. Yeah? And you see, at that time it was far outside. Yeah? And I like it very much because he reinvented unplastered brick. At that time, Chinese bricks, yeah, and showed the people, some other projects too, that brick is a stable material, you don't need to plaster. So it was a rethinking of, I just look at the drawing, the houses outside there, the plastered Indian style buildings, flat roofs. So he reinvented, and this is one of the biggest success, and I think one dormitory at university, some private houses, and Tarragon I like, but it's wrong. It's not Nepali type, and they got so many problems getting the roof tight, yeah? Because here you should build so, and Tarragon design is North Indian Pakistani style. But to show people that you don't need color, only good design, brick, and then windows, of course, even paving. So the buildings come out of the ground and the stepways, yeah. And but I was not involved in this because I, after a short time doing a private temporary research project, or let's finish with Mary Schlosser. So I learned from the basis to about the smallest buildings, about mud. How can I know what a mud is? Yeah, or a monastery, Bahal. So by them, and this was a good experience for both Gautam and Mary. They have been, how to say, Gautam was home trained Bhattacharya, and he knew much about history and all the 1,000 gods you have here. And Mary had, being a foreigner, another view, and I was the architect to explain. So there was a good exchange of basic ideas how a building was built. And then I went home in between because no following up engagement. But before I left in 72 home, 72. And I had someone from UNESCO, or someone asked me if I would be interested to work for Hanumandoka project. Of course I said, yes. And as I had some money because of working for Mary Schlosser, I said, before I started 2 years contract, I go home. It was planned 2-3 weeks, because UNESCO said, or UN here, we need signature of Nepali government. 1 month gone, 2 months gone, 3 months gone, 4 months gone. In the 5th month, I heard in news, Singha Durbar burned out. Oh shit, no signature, and how to get it if all the papers have burned away. But 2 days before the fire, government had signed, yeah, and given it to UN, so I got information, so I came here, yeah. So, and from that on, it was also not planned for 4 years. I joined Hanumandoka project. As the John Sandy was the UN, how to say, project leader has been Hariratna Ranjitkar, and how you call it, the advisor has been John Sandy. And now I got into detail to learn how the Newar, because it's Newar culture, and all the carvers and bricklayers and masons all have been Newars. And for example, the wood carvers all came from Bhaktapur. A bit time consuming, yeah, and to pay them, I think, 1 rupee a day more than government rate. We added an hour, working hour, to the contract, and this was, I think, the time I learned most.
Right.
Yeah,
So
because
how long did it take? How long the duration of the working hour there?
from maybe beginning or maybe first half of end of 72 they started, but I joined, if I remember well, you must look in my CV, maybe beginning of 73 with, and as the big, I think it was marriage party of Crown Prince Birenda should have been, and I think it happened in 75, in the Nassau show, with having the facade with the Kirtipur Tower and Nautale finished. So we had to start with those towers first and get it ready. Yeah, and so I was a kind, yeah, I did measure all the 4 towers too, and a bit of the courtyard in detail. Because, for example, Kirtipur Tower had to be pulled down completely as a metal roof, Bengali style, was like a sieve, because if there was a problem, they put a nail more, since 200, 300 years. Yeah, so the bent rafters, how to say, had to be redone completely. Yeah, and over there I learned what I call the most clever detail. If you take the of a temple, the Gajua way, and of course the Jingatis, you can take the building very easy apart because of the tsukul. And the tsukul keeps all the elements in position. So this small element, for me, is more important than the carved rafter or tunasi or whatever, because how can you construct 9 stories kept together without nail, without screw, only by a certain technique? And if you could go afterwards downstairs, I could explain. Yeah, so taking apart was easy. You repaired, and we tried. And our topic was to keep as much as original and as less as possible new invention or new material. Yeah, and each part we had to carve new and copy got a kind of stamp, maybe a bit too tiny, so that researchers could find out 40 years later what is the original, I don't know, 350-year-old part and what's a new one. So I think also Hariratna, I mention his name because I work now with his son together, Rohit Ranjitkar.
Right.
Yeah, and so I got more and more supervising the actual work and measuring. And I'm not very anyhow, in 77 the project was closed, and when I came back in 2010, 2011, 12, I also went around and asked, where are my drawings? And in 2015, drawings gone, but I learned that the Chinese started to reassemble, and like the very complicated Bhaktapur Tower, you can't do by photos only. And someone, it's rumor, told, yes, they found a bunch or roll of drawings somewhere, how to say, misplaced in a corner. So they could use, as the rumor says, my drawings for reconstructing Basantapur, who can reconstruct Basantapur if you got only a photo? Yeah, and the other towers. So those drawings seem to have helped to get it back to scale. Yeah.
So back then and now, if you compare the architectural structures that are being built, do you find any differences in the
You mean
temples?
after earthquake 2000?
Back there in the 1960s when it began? And these
Look,
days?
there was not much of renovation. If you look, especially at old photos, and if you go to Kathmandu Valley, what is that, KVPT, and talk to Rohit, how Patan Durbar looked like, not cared for, yeah, and it was not the problem of Rana style. They at least made, if the roofs are tight, the building is safe, yeah, and I learned how important photography at that time was. I did not do research. I photographed what I liked, and about it, of course, the palace in Patan too, because I had to take photos for my measurements. I showed Patan Palace too, a bit more in detail. And for example, at what is that, Sundara Chowk, yeah, the golden tap was stolen. And Mary photographed it too, and they, the KVPT could, was it 3 years ago, copy it, and I think if you have to ask him, a few days before they installed the copy, the original came back.
Oh.
Yeah, so the original,
After they installed
original is now in the museum, and the copy they left. Or at Mulchok, above the door, the big Tirana details stolen. So they could get Mary's detailed photos. I got it too, but I didn't know about the problem. So copies, what you see now, are done as good copies, very good copies of old black and white photos. Yeah, this shows that, how to say, Mary did it by purpose, photographing oil. I did it for architecture, not for details. But I was asked when maybe in, what was it, after earthquake, yes, by Niels Gutschow, do you have old photos? And I found of that time all my old black and white. And now they're scanned, because you don't recognize certain buildings anymore, because surrounded by concrete and are not existing anymore. So this showed me, but already, how to say, 50 years later, that documentation is important. Yeah, and this was the reason that those 4 temples could be rebuilt. Back to your question. Yeah. So I like the humor of the artist.
Right. So we talked about the architectural experiences that you had here in Nepal. Let's talk about the tradition. Is there any difference in the cultural practices that you have noticed back then and these days?
It's a political question. Yeah, but I think I should state I was very surprised and lucky to be able to come as a retired person after 35 years of almost no contact to Nepal to join KVPT, as they till now, how to say, do and did the best work in Nepal. I don't want to mention the special Department of Archaeology, yeah, using concrete I saw. And there was big fight, or still is discussion, how much of modern material and technique you should invent or not. And I heard of a law or rule, I think by the department and some experts, to use only traditional material and traditional technique. To me, or for me, the word only is wrong. And I told before that we got the responsibility after earthquake to make buildings safe or safer. And I'm very sure that Mala kings or rulers would have invented new material if they would have known. They also had every 70, 80 years an earthquake. Yeah? And around the world, maybe there are 1 or 2 buildings in Japan and China, they are rebuilt every, I don't know, 10 years, exactly to, yeah. But it's tradition since, I don't know how many 100 years. But this tradition you don't have, and even UNESCO does not say, and other big organizations, about only. So Notre Dame is rebuilt in Paris after fire as much as possible with a traditional design is easy to make, but material, but to improve. And here it should be same. So a big discussion about certain people here about the word only. Yeah? And as I said, it's worldwide not the rule to say only, as much as possible. Yeah? And so, look, I can't look, or I could not check how Kathmandu was rebuilt. It looks nice, but if I remember well, I haven't been there last year, but before Corona, that they even threw many parts away. The 4 central main posts, I think only 1 old, yeah, and 3 new, which was a topic too, to bring them from Terai. But I think in Patan they would have, maybe if the lower part is damaged by dampness and so, then you can cut and have a certain technique to add old and new. And I saw a photo after earthquake showing a yellow bulldozer plying through the rubble. How can this be done? Yeah? And I think the big mountain at Tundikel, I think it's the rest of what the bulldozer collected.
It was the residue. Residue of,
Yeah, but you need it maybe to save people, but how to say, you can't put everything together because many, many carvings are lost. And in Patan, Rohit called police and army to guard the rubble. And then they took by hand, piece by piece. And if you see the Charnarai, which I measured, I think they could reuse 80% of timber. And maybe in Kathmandu, 80% new. Kathmandu doesn't show much of carving, but the 3-roof temple next to Kumari house. Go there and look and ask them how much of old material has been used. I see thin timber, only a few traditional struts. Where are all the old struts or the rest of it? Yeah? And they rebuilt what they call Rana style, that they plaster and paint white. I don't know why. And how can you paint the wood black? What for? Everything is hidden and the details. Yeah? And so good renovations have been done, but I think too many not. Rani Pokhari Yeah, who knew how is an old original structure. Yeah, and the pond has never been faced by such nice, beautiful walls. Yeah, so sometimes it's overdone. Yeah, and a bit of fantasy. Yeah, it's okay if you later tell according to or because of this and that we did it so. Yeah, and why is the place closed? Why can't people use it and go to the temple? Ratna Park, still now closed. I had to pay one's entrance fee. Yeah, it should be public space and cared for. So I would say, and maybe you should come once to Pater Durbar Square. I won't have much time anymore because I return. And if you look at the Chanarayan temple, you won't believe that it's rebuilt. It looks so perfectly as before. Yeah? And they saved so much. And if maybe a leg was missing or at a window a certain carving missing, so the carvers knew how to do. Yeah? And so it's very important not to find carvers who can carve, but are by tradition carvers and have their books to study, one strut missing. What we had in Hanumantoka at that time, one strut was missing, but the carvers knew which goddess. Then I helped a bit to recreate it on paper and then on the wooden part. And over there I also learned you can't just say, oh, we put this and this goddess. They tell the gods will fight each other if the sequence is not correct. Yeah? And but I didn't go too much in detail concerning gods because you got too many. Yeah? So, how to say, I concentrated on measuring, doing good renovation, yeah, and by Hanumantoka project, I learned also how things are done, yeah, and how people work together, and especially the woodcarvers from Bhaktapur. You did not need to supervise. You gave them a broken piece. They knew how to do and what to do, and as a final sentence, I got step by step into business. I'm not a researcher. I was not trained how to do documentation, yeah, at a university. So by going around finding places, simple maps, then doing the work for Mary Slosser, and then Hanumantoka. So slowly, unwillingly, incidentally, I learned so much. Yeah.
Let's change the topic. Let's get back to the book that you did back in 2015 with Sukrasagar Srestha. How did you tie up with him?
I think I met him, must have been 13, 14. He came daily, almost daily, to Patan, also for health problems. He had to walk. And so he came very often to KVPT office, Mangal Bazar, and he knew my book. And so we sat together having tea and breakfast and whatever, and I think we very quickly understood that he is as curiously as me, and go around and look and ask, why is that so? Inside building, not from outside. And it was a very good exchange between old barges. Yeah, that time not as old as now. And this you need. I cannot go around only and study. If I have a question, I would like to get an answer. Very often, even very primitive things, people say, oh, it was like this. Sadai testator, yeah? Doesn't help. So I had to figure out, yeah? I'm working with also young people or playing football and athletics. I learned about private life too, how they live. Yeah, big family at that time, large houses. Now they cut a house to pieces, cutting through windows and doors. Anyhow, and one day we thought of why, or we talked about erotic carvings too. I had a good collection and so we said, why should we not do a book on it? And I proposed, as all my books, 3 books then, have been line drawings. It was cheaper to print, but 50 years ago, yeah, or 45, you could not print good color here. Yeah? So it was very clear, we only show drawings. And we sat together, selected, and then therefore you have to ask Roshan Dongo later, let's force him for detail. Roshan and Sukrasaga had, oh my brain is not working, another draftsman doing a simple type of, and Roshan we gave him a photo. So for an overview, Ekaram made simple sketches, and I wanted him to, I learned that he is not good in color only, but pencil and charcoal. So I forced a poor, young, unmarried man to sketch all details in a good scale, yeah. And I think it's also, and we also learned to look a bit more, yeah. So it was just, how to say, when we met, no idea about writing a book, but we had a nice collection, and then we thought, why should the world not see this? He wrote some text and me a text, because we didn't want to value, we only want to put forward, hoping that someone would show up and the answer for the question, why are they over there? Very different from Indian type, no answer yet. So we described, and the age we knew, because we knew the age of the temple, and so it was a collection of this thing.
In a nutshell, why are they there?
Sorry?
In a nutshell, in a small paragraph, could you please highlight why are they there itself? Why are there?
I don't know.
Paintings?
I don't know. I only like the version that lightning is a virgin, therefore you ask, and that the virgin doesn't, how to say, would be scared to see the erotic carvings and would return to maybe hit another building. Yeah, but this is very, I heard it 2-3 times from carver and private people. Now scientists think very complicated things, so no one knows the answer.
In the same line, the 2 old Bajes, Sukrasagar, Shrestha, and you yourself, were tying up with a young artist, Roshan Dongo.
Yes.
How was the experience like? You forced him?
You better ask him later. No, we thought also, why not supporting an artist? And as I knew him well, and as I wanted not to include photos, the catalogue was later enforced by Padma Sundar and Raju Roka, who invested money, me too, for the book. Ask him how he felt when we forced him to do. For it was easy to say, you get so and so many hundreds or thousands rupees for one, do you want to do? I think he had trouble. Therefore I used the word, we raped him. Yeah? And who can do it like that? And if you have photos, you get a pigeon or dirt or dust or electric wire, ask your electricity department why they use temple struts for wiring. We got very clean drawings concentrating on the topic. And this was also very helpful. Yeah? If you have nowadays photographed a temple, also concrete around. Yeah? So we wanted to concentrate on this, and maybe also we wanted to shock the public and say, look, you don't care, it's also part of Newar wood carving history. Yeah? So not much of philosophical or theoretical stuff behind. Yeah? I'm an architect, not trained in other fields, and I think he had Sukrasaga had much fun showing this topic, and that we are able to do it. Yeah? And no one, and the sell of the book is poor. Yeah? And I can understand, looking at it, you don't need to do it very intensively, you just look and go. But to have the most beautiful carvings on the lap, it's something else. True. Or instead of scrolling, yeah? So maybe we just said we do it and want to shock a bit the world and tell, look, why looking away? Yeah.
So this time you are tying up with the Mona Museum here, and you're not only showing your architectural works here, all your paintings are also here.
No, most of them I show here because a bit like Tarragon, but like this exhibition I didn't have before. And look, if you come once in a year for 5 weeks, people might not know. And maybe my drawings are not of so much of interest. Yeah? And here I found the idea, because Rajan is very interested, say, Kathmandu. This was his focal point, I think also to address me, you have to ask him. And I had to learn that Kathmandu for the Kathmandu Newar is the most important building. Yeah? And when they realized that it was rebuilt with the help of my drawings. Yeah? So getting older and older, so I got a bit more and more fame.
Is there any significant thing that the artist or the architect these days missing from the eyes of an old architect?
I think by measuring or photographing is to if you want to understand the soul or technical solution the former builders found to build such huge structures only with wood and timber, that you have to look. And if you sketch and try to copy, then you see much more than studying a photograph. And therefore I said before, elevations are helpful, but sections and plans too. And as more you sketch or go into detail, as more you learn. Yeah? So I'm very traditional in also when we later talk about the paintings. I did not produce those from photo. Even the nude paintings not. We really say it was live action, or in Venice or at other places. I've been sitting there and sketched. Yeah? Maybe I used photos later for large size, or for enlargements. I'm very shocked. I give from time to time some classes to students of architecture who have to measure. They can't look and they can't, most of them, I mean some learned of course, you have to learn to look at the structure, to make a line and then to add the measurement. Later you can use the computer to make a technical drawing. And computer helps very much to enlarge and reduce, which we couldn't do. Yeah? But the measuring, the computer can't go and climb. Yeah? And if someone wants to learn about measuring, he has to do it from the scratch with very small items. I had another at home, education. We also had to measure small buildings, so I had some kind of practice, but no building I could compare with the complicated structures.
So what happens with the artwork down the line after you are done? Have you thought of documenting it in certain way, the works that you have done so far?
No, it was stored and good for nothing. And therefore I'm here, and I gave many of the original drawings tracing paper I had to bring again from Germany to Tarragona Museum as an archive. And what I learned that time, the best here and the care best. Yeah? And if people want to use, they can do it if they know about it. Yeah? And I think also Niels Gutschow, he also said, I got thousands of paintings or sketches and drawings. I think all his material is over there to be used. Yeah? No, getting old, my children are not interested in old Nepali buildings. Yeah? So one day it will be dumped, and here it's saved. Yeah? And I hope that even by this interview that many young people learn that the drawings do exist. Yeah? And if this would happen, it would be best. And I also gave all my slides on Nepal to Tarragon for scanning, and they will, how you call it, open access later on. And there's a Heidelberg project. I gave black and white drawings. And I think there's a big demand, what means big, a demand of young researchers or students to use the material. And why not?
So at last, but not the least, would like to ask you for any concluding remarks or the questions that I have not asked so far, or you'd like to reply, anything like that?
There are so many things to tell or explain. Yeah, and I think it's more your task to put down questions and try, I don't know what your special interest is, and how to say, to get deeper and deeper into the subject. Yeah, and having been for 35 years away, I decided somehow, not that Nepal is finished my connection, but I won't measure it. And you will find only one drawing, they put it down somewhere, of a sketch, or not a sketch, a painting of Patanderva Square, the only one where I really sat down, sketched, and made a, I think, acrylic color. I don't know why I did not show more. Maybe because climbing, measuring 1,000 times, doing the same lines, how to say, this was my, how to say, where I could show my best experience. Yeah? And so we might jump later onto not only nude, that at home I started in my free time to join courses to paint. Yeah? Because in my youth we didn't have money, or I didn't have money to study a bit art. And so when traveling, doing the sketches, put it to paper and to use color. Yeah? And you will see very different styles because I'm not fixed. And what I also learned here and at home, that quite a lot of young students do don't want to study really, say, drawing and from the scratch, but they start abstract. Yeah? Picasso was a very common, normal painter, and over many years by step, he freed himself from doing traditional. But if you don't have a basis of being able to sketch or draw, I think most of them will not succeed in good art. Yeah, and Sudarshan Dongal with a line drawn. They are so beautiful and so simple. You need one pen and you make great art. Yeah, and then maybe a few words on nude. It was not the question only to create new paintings. I wanted to create, my drawings are flat, and I wanted to create volume. And this you can do best, I think, with persons and add shadow. They live from shadow, not of the detail of the hand. Yeah, different colors, different techniques. So I liked this and still like it very much because it's completely different from being a draftsman of Nepali temples.
Thank you so much for your time.
If you want later, or if questions come up, we can do later more. But you have to, when going through the film, why did he not mention this, or answer it properly? Yeah, I talked much, but maybe didn't get to the point. Yeah, and
it happened in just one question.
Hmm?
It happened in one question just. We could talk about it later on.
Yes.
You can take rest now. I think we tired you so much.
No, I have got some work to do, so yeah.
Thank you so much for
So
your
much.
time.
You asked Raja what
Sure.
he would like
Sure.
what to show and why he took this, how to say, combination on. It was not my idea, but his. Yeah, and for later on, because he's so shy, Russian Dongle to find out how someone got to this point where he's now and how he felt doing the detailed sketches.
Sure. Let's talk about this exhibition.
Okay.
How did you plan it?
So actually, Wolfgang was so nice that of course, I've known Wolfgang for quite some time. I don't know, maybe for 5-10 years. I don't even remember how long I've known him for. So just about a month ago, Pranav Man Singh approached me, and he said he was going to do an exhibition for Wolfgang. And I said I would be more than happy to do it here at Mona, and I would give a certain space inside Mona to have his exhibition, because he is one of the most important person. People have not realized his work that he did in the past 50 years is one of the most important works which we have been able to rebuild the Kathmandu. A lot of people talk about Kathmandu. They talk about the origin of Kathmandu. And the whole origin comes out from that one single Kathmandu. And if after the earthquake, if he had not come to Nepal, if he had not climbed up those temples and did that measurement, today Kathmandu would not be there.
So there are not only the works of architecture here, as we can see. His paintings are also there.
Yes.
Could you shed more lights why they are there?
See, when people know how I want to introduce Wolfgang, is not only by the person what he has done. That is one part of him. But there's also other parts of his life. So I just don't want the people to know Wolfgang from the architecture, but I also want him to know that his passion for art, his love, what he used to do, what he does in his free time, how he spends his life, because I want the people to know him for who he is, not only for what he has done. so that we can respect him as of a person and as of his sacrifices that he has done. Yes, because of him, since 1970, he went and he most probably did the measurement of 10 to 15 major temples of the Kathmandu Valley. But there is also another side of him. And I want the people of Nepal, the people of the world, to know the other side of him as well. So that we can see, because to know an artist, we can know through their paintings. And I felt, when I looked at his artwork, I felt his happiness, I felt his pain, I felt his emotions, I felt his frustrations. So I want the people to know that side of Wolfgang as well.
So could you tell me more about how long this exhibition is going to happen?
So the exhibition is going to start, which is the 10th of March, and it is going to go on for 8 days because he's leaving after a couple of days, and I want the exhibition to happen right now when he's here. And also because we have another big exhibition that is coming on. After this exhibition, after 1 week, we have Lok Chitrakar's exhibition, which is going to be one of the biggest exhibition ever in the world in regarding to one artist, a power. So that's why we're just doing it for 1 week, as long as, and I want Wolfgang to be here. I want the people, whoever comes to the exhibition, to have a chance to meet him. He's 79 years old.
Is there any chances that the art lovers or the community here could buy the artworks
Yes.
that Wolfgang has done over the years?
Yes, the museum has acquired about 8 to 10 pieces of the artwork for the museum collection, and the rest of the artwork is on sale. And the reason that it is on sale, actually I never sell artwork from the museum at any exhibition, but this time we have made an exception. The reason that we have made an exception is because this money that is coming is going to write his book. His autobiography is being written right now, which is going to take about a year, year and a half. And to write that book, can you imagine that a man came to Nepal in 1968, worked for 2 years, and in 1970, for the love of this country, he worked throughout his life. And now he wants to write a book, and there are a couple of writers who wants to write that book. And he didn't have the money to write the book. So this artwork, we are selling some of his artwork, I think about 10 or 15 of his artwork is on sale, and it's at a very reasonable price, from 10,000 all the way to 30,000 rupees, his original artwork. And also we are going to be selling his prints, and all the money that is going for the writing of his book. So that is what we want to do. He is a very, very important part of our history, and we cannot forget him. We should not forget him. Because if it wasn't for his blueprints that he drew, today Kathmandu would not have been rebuilt. So it is the obligation of every Nepali, it is the obligation of every Kathmanduma बस्ने मान्छेहरुको obligation हो. किनभने चाहिँ हामीलाई चाहिँ नि काठमाडौँ भनेको चाहिँ काठमाडौँबाट आएको नाम त्यति चाहिँ भन्न आउँछ, तर काठमाडौँको हिस्ट्री के हो त? हामीले चाहिँ 7 वर्षको हिस्ट्री समेत पनि बिर्सिसक्यो. यो मान्छेको चाहिँ नि लेखाइले गर्दा नपाइले गर्दाखेरि आज हामी काठमाडौँ हेरिरहेको छौँ. नत्र चाहिँ नि त्यहाँ चाहिँ अहिले चाहिँ सबै मोटरसाइकल पाएको हुन्थ्यो. मैले चाहिँ वुल्फग्याङको एक्जिबिसन चाहिँ एक्चुअली इट इज फ्री. इफ एनीबडी कम्स एन्ड वाच लुक्स कम, यहाँ चाहिँ वुल्फग्याङको चाहिँ एक्जिबिसन हेर्ने आउने हो भने चाहिँ हामीले चाहिँ पैसा पनि नलिने. फर द फर्स्ट टाइम मोनामा चाहिँ वी आर गिभिङ फ्री एन्ट्रेन्स इफ पिपल वान्ट टु कम एन्ड वाच वुल्फग्याङको एक्जिबिसन. सो एनीबडी क्यान कम, जस्ट कम हियर. अब लाइन धेरै बस्यो भने चाहिँ बाहिर अलिकति कुर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ होला, तर चाहिँ हामीले चाहिँ यो एक्जिबिसन चाहिँ सबैलाई फ्री गर्ने, एटलिस्ट चाहिँ नेपालीलाई. एटलिस्ट थ्याङ्क यू सो मच.
रोशन डम्बल हुनुहुन्छ. रोशनजीले वुल्फग्याङ कोर्नसँगै मिलेर एउटा किताबमा स्केचिङहरू गर्नुभएको छ. उहाँको स्केचेसहरू गर्ने एक्सपिरियन्स अथवा गर्दाखेरिको क्षणमा लागेका एक्सपिरियन्सहरू थोरै बताइदिनुहुन्छ.
कोर्नसँग मिलेर गरेको बुकको प्रोजेक्टमध्ये यो मेरो पहिलो चाहिँ होइन. पहिला पनि शिखरा र स्तूप शैलीको किताबमा कभर डिजाइन चाहिँ गर्ने मौका पाएको थिएँ। त्यस लगत्तै पछिल्लो उहाँको यो इरोटिक कार्विङ्स अफ काठमाडौँ भ्याली किताबमा चाहिँ नि उहाँलाई तोरणहरूमा हुने कलाकृतिको चाहिँ नि त्यो पुरानो भइसकेको हुँदाखेरि धमिलो थियो, प्रष्ट थिएन। त्यसलाई चाहिँ उहाँको विचार चाहिँ नि स्केचबाट चाहिँ नि मूर्त रूप दिने, अब टुटेफुटेका हुन्थे होइन, त्यसलाई चाहिँ नि मैले मूर्त रूपमा दिनुपर्ने उहाँको प्रस्ताव थियो। हुन त म पोर्ट्रेटमा धेरै इन्जोय गर्ने, अब त्यसबाट पनि फिगरेटिभ भन्दा पनि यो मोर अब कस्तो भने ट्रेडिसनल पनि होइन होइन, फेरि डिटेल पनि चाहिने, यो नयाँ शैलीको काम र विधा पनि अलिकति नयाँ हुँदाखेरि मैले सकेसम्म आफूलाई चाहिँ नि यो शैलीका आर्टहरू चाहिँ नगर्ने मेरो विचार थियो मेरो करियरको लागि। तर जब उहाँको कुरा सुने, अब एउटा विदेशी मान्छे त्यहाँदेखि आएर हाम्रै नेपालमै भएको कलाकृतिको बारेमा यतिको इख राखेर काम गरिरहेको छ भने मैले पनि यसलाई चाहिँ अब नगर्ने भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ ठिक नहोला, पछिको लागि चाहिँ नि एउटा राम्रो यसले मेरो करियरको लागि पनि खुर्किलो तय गर्ला भन्ने आधारमा मैले काम गरेँ। अब यो काम गर्दाखेरि हुन्छ त भने होइन, तर काम गर्न पनि त्यति सजिलो चाहिँ थिएन। जस्तै फोटोहरू उहाँले जुन दिनुहुन्थ्यो त्यसमा चाहिँ नि केही पनि नदेखिने, त्यो प्रष्ट अब हो कि होइन जस्तो धुलो होइन, वर्षौँको 100औं वर्षको धुलो हावापानीले त्यो बिग्रिसकेको मकिसकेको कलाकृतिमा पनि प्रष्ट रूप दिने बेलामा अब कुनै भागहरू चाहिँ नि टुटेफुटेका, अब कुनैमा हात हुँदैन थिए, कुनैमा खुट्टा हुँदैन थिए, त्यसलाई पनि अब एउटा कल्पना शक्तिलाई प्रयोग गरेर कसरी पूर्ण रूप दिने, कसरी त्यसलाई फ्रेस बनाउने भन्ने कुरा। अनि प्लस अर्को एउटा पक्ष के रह्यो भने जस्तै सायद तपाईँले मन्दिरमा गएर होइन प्रत्यक्ष त्यो टुँडाल हेर्दाखेरि त्यसबाट पाउने अनुभव, त्यसले पार्ने प्रभाव अर्कै हुनसक्छ। मेरो भागमा चाहिँ नि त्यसको आस्थेटिक पक्षलाई चाहिँ कसरी मात्र टिपेर राख्ने भन्ने चाहिँ मेरो लागि एउटा चुनौतीपूर्ण थियो, जुनमा चाहिँ मैले रमाएँ भनौँ। एउटा कठिन सङ्घर्ष पनि थियो। करिब 55वटा आर्टवर्कहरू थिए अनि फेरि सबै चाहिँ A3 साइजमा बनाएको थिएँ मैले। A3 साइजमा फुल स्केलको त्यो कम्पोजिसनहरूलाई राख्दा पक्कै पनि अब अनुहार, हात, खुट्टाका त्यो एनाटोमिकल भागहरू, डिटेलहरू सानो हुन्थे। मैले त्यसको लागि जिरोदेखि लिड पेन्सिलको सहारा पनि लिनु पर्यो त्यति डिटेलमा काम गर्नु होइन, किनभने म त धेरै ठुल्ठुलो क्यानभासमा ठुलो ब्रस स्ट्रोकमा रमाउने मान्छे। त्यो मिनिमलिस्टिक होइन सानो काम गर्दाखेरि कहीँ न कतै राम्रै अनुभव मैले बटुलेँ।